I never thought I'd find myself here, typing this out after everything that happened. My name is Mike, and I was married to a woman named Sarah for 5 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship. At least it felt that way before I went off to serve our country. I was a soldier, and like any husband, I wanted to provide for my family. But as fate would have it, life threw me a curveball that shattered my world. I was deployed overseas and suffered injuries during combat. When I got home, I found myself in a military hospital, healing both physically and mentally. It's a strange experience, recovering from something that was supposed to make you stronger but instead leaves you feeling vulnerable. While I was focused on my recovery, I noticed some changes in Sarah. She started acting a bit distant. At first, I dismissed it as stress. She was balancing work and having to worry about me. But as the days turned into weeks, those little things became harder to ignore. She spent more time on her phone than usual, often stepping out of the room to take calls. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off with a quick excuse about work. "It's just my boss, Mike. You know how demanding they can be." But something didn't sit right with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper going on. One day, while I was still stuck in that hospital bed, I overheard hushed tones from the hallway. They were talking about me, but not in a way that filled me with the warmth of love and support. I recognized my platoon commander's voice, Charlie. I had trusted him with my life out there. They were discussing me, but as the words drifted in, I realized they were not discussing my recovery. They were talking about Sarah. That was the moment the first cracks appeared in my heart. I waited until I was alone in my room, my heart racing. I couldn't just let it go. I pulled out my phone and started digging. I scrolled through social media, looking for any sign of betrayal. A couple of clicks later, I found a post that made my stomach drop. Sarah and Charlie were tagged together. It looked like some kind of event, and they were standing way too close, laughing as if they shared a secret. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I couldn't breathe. My mind raced through memories of the last few months of her being distant, of her excuses, and suddenly everything clicked. I felt sick and betrayed. How could she do this to me, especially while I was recovering? All I could think was that she had been unfaithful with someone I considered a brother. My anger bubbled up, and before I knew it, I was on my feet, determined to confront her. I had to know the truth, and I had to do it now. The mood in my hospital room shifted from despair to fiery determination. I wasn't going to let her lie to me anymore. When Sarah arrived, I had a fire in my eyes. The moment she stepped through the door, I could tell she sensed something was off. She gave me a smile that seemed forced, and I knew I had to push through the facade. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Her demeanor changed instantly. "What's wrong, Mike?" she asked, her voice laced with feigned concern. I took a deep breath, ready to unleash the storm. "I know about you and Charlie." The look on her face was priceless, a mix of confusion and panic. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, her eyes darting away from mine. I could tell she was scrambling to come up with a lie, and I wasn't going to give her the chance to twist the truth. I laid the evidence out bare, the post, the whispers, and the shifts in her behavior. Her initial shock morphed into defensive anger, and she kept insisting that I was misunderstanding everything. "You're being paranoid, Mike. Charlie is just a friend. You know how close we all are in the military." But I wasn't buying it. It was infuriating how she tried to downplay it. I felt anger boiling inside me, and it mixed with the hurt. "A friend? Sarah, this is more than friendship." As she continued to deny it, a knot formed in my chest. This wasn't just about infidelity. It was about the betrayal of trust, a trust I'd fought to uphold even while I was away. In that moment, I realized I was done with her lies. The woman who promised to stand by me in sickness and health had shattered our vows. I needed to take action, but what? I was lost in a whirlpool of emotions: rage, sadness, betrayal, and confusion. But one thing was clear: I wouldn't let this go unpunished. As the confrontation continued, I could feel the anger morphing into a plan, a need for revenge, something that would give me back the power she had stripped from me. Life had dealt me a hard hand, but I was determined to find brotherhood with those who understood true sacrifice, those who had been through hell and back just like me. What was the next step? I didn't know yet, but I was ready to figure it out. As I sat in that hospital bed, I vowed to make her feel the same pain she had inflicted on me. I just needed to gather my thoughts, and that's exactly what I planned to do. The confrontation with Sarah left me feeling more lost than ever. I was still in my hospital bed, but my body felt restless, as if it was begging me to escape the emotional turmoil. I had spent weeks recovering from physical injuries, but now I was faced with the far more brutal wounds of betrayal. I had to channel my anger into something purposeful. I needed to plan my revenge, and I needed support. After the confrontation, Sarah left the room in tears, claiming she had never cheated on me, that I was imagining things. But I knew better. A gut feeling can be a powerful thing, and everything in my gut was screaming that she was lying. My mind raced as I considered my options. I reached out to my best friends from the platoon, men who had seen me at my worst and who understood the solemn bond of brotherhood. I texted Jason and Mark, telling them I needed to talk, that it was urgent. They knew I was recovering and would be in my hospital room soon. While I waited for them to arrive, I replayed the conversation with Sarah in my mind. It was maddening how she twisted everything around. I remembered the way she looked at me, that mix of panic and defiance. She thought she could manipulate me, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was the one who deserved loyalty, love, and respect, and she had thrown it all away for a fleeting thrill with my commander. When Jason and Mark arrived, they marched into the room with a sense of purpose. Both were fit and looked like warriors who just come off the battlefield, strong, loyal, and trustworthy. As they settled into the chairs beside my bed, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. These were the kinds of guys who would have my back no matter what. "What happened, Mike?" Jason asked, his voice low and serious. I took a breath, the weight of the moment settling in. I spent the next hour pouring out everything: the injuries, the recovery, the changes in Sarah, and finally the gut-wrenching discovery of her affair. Their expressions turned from concern to disbelief, then quickly transformed into anger. "Charlie, your platoon commander, the guy you trusted," Mark exclaimed, his face twisting in disgust. "What a scumbag! I can't believe he would do that to you." Jason nodded, his jaw clenched. "You need to do something about this, man. You can't just let it slide. You deserve better." I agreed wholeheartedly, but I needed a plan, something that would cut deep and leave a mark on both Sarah and Charlie. I told them how I wanted to expose their relationship. I wanted Sarah to feel the same humiliation she had put me through. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity. "Let's think this through," Jason said, leaning forward. "We need to catch them in the act. If you can get evidence, it'll hit harder. You have to make sure she knows you won't stand for this." Mark chimed in. "You could set up a hidden camera in your house or follow her when she thinks she's out with friends. I know it feels dirty, but it might be the only way to get the proof you need." The thought of surveillance felt invasive, but I couldn't deny that it might work. Charlie had made a mockery of our friendship, and Sarah had shattered our marriage vows. "I don't want to just catch them. I want to make sure the whole world knows what they did," I replied, feeling the fire of anger reignite within me. The two of them helped me brainstorm ideas. We discussed how I could use social media to my advantage. I could create fake accounts to make it seem like I was someone else, baiting Sarah into revealing her true self. The thought of her being caught off guard made me feel exhilarated. As the conversation continued, I felt empowered. I realized I was no longer the victim. I was taking control of my life again. I wasn't the one who had betrayed trust. I was the one fighting back. Eventually, we settled on a plan. I would create a fake profile online, pretending to be a guy interested in Sarah's social circle. I could make it look like I was a friend of a friend, someone casual and harmless. With her guardedness eroding thanks to her own guilt, I hoped she would let her guard down. Jason and Mark promised to help me set everything up. They left that night, but I felt a sense of camaraderie that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was determined to reclaim my life, and with their support I felt like I could take on the world. As I lay in bed that night, I thought of Sarah and Charlie. I imagined their faces when I finally revealed the truth. The emotional roller coaster of betrayal, heartbreak, and revenge was just beginning, and I was ready to buckle up for the ride. I was no longer just a soldier recovering from injuries. I was a man who had been pushed to his limits and was ready to fight back against the injustice that had been thrust upon me. I could feel the power of brotherhood fueling my resolve, and I knew I wouldn't face this fight alone. Tomorrow, I would start putting the plan into action. I would show them both that love and trust are not to be trifled with. The next few days were a blur of planning and scheming. With Jason and Mark's help, I set up a fake social media profile. I created a persona named Ryan, a new guy in town who was looking to make friends. I carefully selected a profile picture that looked casual but friendly, nothing that would raise suspicion. I added a few interests and hobbies that aligned closely with Sarah's, hoping to draw her in. Once the profile was created, I scoured her social media to find any mutual friends that I could use to connect with her. I sent a few friend requests, and I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety as I watched the notifications come in. I was stepping into a game that I never wanted to play, but the stakes were high, and I was determined to win. Sarah accepted the friend request almost immediately. I felt a rush of adrenaline. The first step was successful. I spent the next few days liking her posts and commenting on her photos, all while trying to maintain an air of casual charm. I would ask about her hobbies and interests, trying to lure her out of her shell. At times, I felt a pang of guilt. Here I was, pretending to be someone else, deceiving my own wife. But then I would remember her laughter with Charlie, the way she had lied to my face, and the anger would wash over me, pushing aside any remorse. I had every right to confront her, but I needed the proof to back it up. I needed to show her that her actions had consequences. After a week of back-and-forth messaging, I suggested we meet up for coffee. Ryan casually mentioned that I had heard a lot about her through mutual friends and thought it would be great to connect in person. To my surprise, she agreed. I felt both exhilarated and terrified. The day of the meeting arrived, and I chose a cafe a few blocks from the hospital, a place I knew she frequented. I arrived early, my heart pounding as I waited at a corner table, sipping on a drink while pretending to scroll through my phone. I had rehearsed in my mind every possible scenario. Would she recognize me? Would she know something was off? As I watched Sarah walk in, looking radiant in her casual outfit, I felt a mix of emotions wash over me. She had no idea that the man she was about to meet was her husband's alter ego. I forced a smile as she approached the table. "Ryan?" she asked, a hint of curiosity in her voice. "Yeah, that's me," I replied, extending my hand. "It's great to finally meet you." We settled into conversation, and I focused on keeping things light and friendly. I asked about her job, her interests, and how she was coping with everything. She opened up about her work struggles and touched on her life and hobbies. It was easy to see why I fell in love with her in the first place, but beneath that charm lay the bitterness of betrayal. As we sat there chatting, I couldn't help but notice how relaxed she seemed. It was like she had completely forgotten the weight of her actions, the lies she had spun. I wanted to shake her and make her understand the pain she had caused. Halfway through our conversation, something unexpected happened. Charlie walked into the cafe. My heart raced, and I felt a surge of anger. There he was, the very man who had betrayed me, laughing with a friend. He hadn't seen me yet, and I knew that if I played my cards right, I could expose him as well. I shifted my focus back to Sarah, who was blissfully unaware of the incoming storm. "You're not going to believe who just walked in," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "Your friend Charlie is here." She glanced over her shoulder, her expression shifting slightly. "Oh, really? I didn't know he was here." It was subtle, but I could see a flicker of apprehension in her eyes. She looked back at me, trying to keep the conversation going, but I could sense her unease. "Yeah, it's funny how small this town can be," I replied, watching her reactions. "You two seem close." Her response was quick. "We're just friends from work, nothing more." It was the same line she had used before, and I felt a rush of anger bubbling up again. I wanted to dig deeper, to press her further, but I needed to tread carefully. "Friends can share a lot," I said, giving her a knowing look. "Like secrets." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "What do you mean by that?" Before I could respond, Charlie came over to our table, his presence instantly altering the atmosphere. "Hey, Sarah," he called out with a big grin. He wrapped an arm around her shoulder, and my vision blurred with rage. "Charlie, what a surprise," she said, her voice too cheerful. I watched as they exchanged pleasantries, pretending to be just two friends catching up. I couldn't hold back anymore. What a coincidence, huh? I said, my voice cutting through the air. Both of them turned to look at, and I could see the surprise and confusion on their faces. Ryan, this is my friend Charlie, Sarah said, her tone suddenly cautious. She didn't know how much I knew. I could feel the tension in the air, a thick, suffocating silence. Yeah, I know, I replied, leveling my gaze at Charlie. We've heard a lot about each other lately. Charlie's smile faltered for a moment, and I could see the wheels turning in his head, trying to come up with a way to diffuse the situation. Oh, really? All good things, I hope. More like good luck, I shot back, my voice steady. Sarah shot me a glance, panic flashing across her face. Maybe we should talk later, she suggested, her voice strained. No, let's talk now, I insisted. You both seem so close. I'd love to know what you've been discussing behind my back. For a moment, I reveled in the chaos I had created. The two of them were caught off guard, their comfortable facade crumbling beneath the weight of the truth. My heart raced and I felt a rush of power. I was finally taking control. As they exchanged nervous glances, I realized this confrontation was just the beginning. I was ready to expose the truth, to show Sarah the consequences of her betrayal, and I wouldn't stop until I had my revenge. The pieces were falling into place, and I was beginning to feel like I could finally reclaim my life. The battle might have just begun, but I was determined to fight it with everything I had. The air in the cafe was thick with tension, and I could feel the weight of my own resolve pressing down on me. I was no longer a passive participant in this betrayal. I was in the driver's seat, ready to steer the narrative in my direction. Sarah and Charlie were visibly rattled, caught off guard by my sudden boldness. I leaned forward, keeping my voice steady and low, determined to maintain control of the conversation. Sarah, I said, locking eyes with her, you've had a lot to say about your friendship with Charlie. Care to explain this little arrangement to me? Charlie glanced between us, his bravado faltering. Look, man, it's not what it looks like. I cut him off, my voice sharp. Don't even try to spin this, Charlie. You're my platoon commander and I trusted you. You were supposed to have my back. His expression turned defensive and I saw the anger flicker in his eyes. You don't know what you're talking about, Mike. Sarah and I are just friends. I've been checking in on her while I'm laid up in a hospital bed. How noble of you, I shot back, sarcasm dripping from my words. I could see Sarah's face pale as the reality of the situation set in. Stop, she interjected, her voice rising above the din of the cafe. You're blowing this out of proportion. Charlie has been supportive while you've been away. I've been stressed, so you decided to jump into bed with my commander. I spat, the anger boiling over. You think that's how you support your husband? By lying and cheating? The cafe felt like it had shrunk around us as the other patrons began to turn their heads, interest piqued by the drama unfolding. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, fueled by anger and a desperate need for closure that had been stolen me by the two people sitting in front of me. Mike, please, she pleaded, her voice trembling. You're misunderstanding everything. Charlie helped me cope while you were away, that's all it was. Helped you cope, is that the excuse you're going with? I asked, incredulous. You think I'd just sit back and allow you to use your friend as an emotional crutch while I'm recovering from combat injuries? You think I'm that naive? Don't put this all on me. Sarah shot back, her frustration spilling out. You weren't here, you don't know what it's been like for me. I felt so alone. That's no excuse for betrayal, I screamed, drawing startled looks from nearby tables. You could have reached out to me, but instead you chose to betray me. You chose to betray our vows. Charlie, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up. Look, man, I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. It was never supposed to go this far. Never supposed to go this far, I repeated, incredulous. But it did. You think that's going to cut it? You think I'm just going to forgive and forget because it was never supposed to happen? I could see Sarah's expression shift from anger to fear. I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind as she processed the ramifications of what we were confronting. I could tell she was trying to figure out her next move, and I was ready for whatever excuse she would pull out of her hat. Look, Mike, I know I messed up, she said, her voice taking on a softer tone. But Charlie was just a friend and I was lost. I didn't mean to hurt you. Lost, I echoed, my voice dripping with disdain. You were lost and you thought sleeping with the one man I trusted was the answer. That's not being lost, that's being completely selfish. In that moment, the facade of our relationship crumbled further. I could see the cracks in her justification, the realization that she had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Anger burned in my chest as I realized that the woman sitting across from me had chosen to betray me while I was vulnerable. Charlie shifted uncomfortably, finally speaking again. Mike, I think we should all just take a step back. This is escalating and it's not good for anyone involved. Not good for anyone involved. I shot back, my voice laced with bitterness. You're the one who's involved, Charlie. You betrayed me and you trespassed on my life. The tension in the cafe was palpable, and I could feel the eyes of strangers boring into us. I knew I had a choice to make. I could continue to press for answers and expose both of them for what they had done, or I could walk away with my dignity and let the betrayal simmer in the background of my recovery. But in that moment, I felt empowered by the anger coursing through my veins. I wanted to confront this head-on. I wanted to expose their lies. You think this is going to blow over? I said, my voice steady. You're wrong. I'm going to make sure everyone knows just who you are, Sarah. Just how you've treated me. Mike, please don't do this, she cried, desperation creeping into her tone. I made a mistake, but we can work through this. We can fix things. Fix things. I scoffed. You think I'm going to forgive you, let this slide, and pretend everything is fine? You've shattered our marriage. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. As the words left my mouth, I realized that I didn't want to go back to the way things were. I didn't want to sweep this under the rug. I had fought hard to protect our relationship, and she had thrown it all away for a moment of weakness. I'm done, I finally said, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. I don't think I want to be with you anymore, Sarah, not after this. The shock on her face was unmistakable, and I could see the tears welling in her eyes. Charlie shifted uncomfortably as the weight of my declaration settled in. I took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the moment. You've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor as I left them sitting there, stunned into silence. I didn't look back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing my pain. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange sense of liberation. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life and my dignity. It was going to be a long road ahead, but I knew I was finally on the right path. I was ready to confront the aftermath of this betrayal and figure out what it meant for me moving forward. I had the support of my brothers, and that was enough to fuel my resolve. I would expose the truth, not just for revenge but to heal and move on. I was ready to embrace whatever came next. Walking away from that cafe felt like I had just emerged from a battlefield. I had confronted Sarah and Charlie, and I had taken a stand. But with that stand came a tidal wave of emotions: relief, anger, sadness, and uncertainty. It was a cocktail of feelings that left me reeling, but I knew one thing for sure: there was no going back to the way things were. As I made my way back to the hospital, I felt the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I needed to find Jason and Mark. They were my brothers, my support system. I couldn't navigate this minefield alone. I needed to talk it out, to process everything that had just happened. When I reached my room, I found them waiting for me, their expressions a mix of concern and curiosity. What happened, man? We saw you leave in a hurry, Jason said, his tone serious. I took a deep breath, ready to unload everything. I confronted them both. Sarah and Charlie, I said, feeling the weight of the moment settle over me again. I told her I knew about the affair, and she didn't deny it. I laid it all out. Mark's eyes widened. And what did they say? They tried to spin it, make it look like it was nothing, but I wasn't having any of it, I replied, my voice gaining strength with every word. I told Sarah I didn't think I could trust her anymore, that I was done. Silence filled the space as my friends absorbed the gravity of my decision. Damn, Mike, Jason said finally, shaking his head. That's huge. You did the right thing. You have to think about your well-being now. I just feel lost, I confessed, my voice wavering. I thought we were building a life together, and now it all feels like a lie. Mark leaned forward. You've been through hell, man. It's okay to feel that way, but you're strong. You'll get through this. You deserve better than what Sarah gave you. I appreciated their support, but the reality of my situation was still hitting hard. I felt like I was standing on a precipice, looking down into an abyss of uncertainty. What's next for me? I asked, the question hanging in the air. Take it one day at a time, Jason advised. Focus on your recovery. You need to heal first and then you can figure out the rest. Yeah, and don't rush into anything, Mark added. You don't owe anyone a decision right now. You need to put yourself first. As I listened to them, I realized they were right. I had spent so much time focused on Sarah and her happiness, even while I was wounded and vulnerable. Now it was my turn to prioritize my own healing journey. I needed to rebuild myself, both physically and emotionally. After our talk, Jason suggested we go for a walk around the hospital grounds. I agreed, appreciating the fresh air and the chance to clear my head. As we strolled through the gardens, I found myself lost in thought. The betrayal still stung, but I was beginning to see it as an opportunity for growth rather than just heartbreak. That night, as I lay in my hospital bed, I reflected on everything that had happened. I was still angry, but I also felt a flicker of hope. I had the chance to redefine my life, to take control of my narrative. While Sarah had chosen to betray me, I was choosing to rise above it. Over the next few days, I focused on my recovery. I attended physical therapy sessions, pushed myself to regain strength, and spent time bonding with Jason and Mark. We shared stories, laughed, and even joked about my situation. They reminded me that there were still good people in my life who cared about me, and that was a comforting thought. But beneath the surface, the plan to expose Sarah and Charlie loomed in my mind. I had gathered the courage to confront them, but it was time to take it a step further. I couldn't let them think they could get away with this. I wanted to make sure they understood the impact of their actions, not just on me but on their own lives. With the help of Jason and Mark, I started to gather evidence. I dug into Sarah's social media, uncovering more details about her interactions with Charlie. I took screenshots of their conversations, noting the suggestive comments and intimate exchanges. The more I found, the more my resolve solidified. I wasn't just going to walk away, I was going to make sure they felt the consequences of their betrayal. I decided to reach out to one of my fellow soldiers, someone I trusted to handle the fallout with grace. I called Chris, a mutual friend who had witnessed the camaraderie and bond we had shared in the platoon. I need you to help me expose them, I said, my voice steady. I want to make sure everyone knows what they did. Are you sure you want to go down this road? Chris asked, concern evident in his tone. It could get messy. I need to, I replied firmly. I can't let them think this is okay. What they did was wrong, and I want everyone to see it. After a long discussion, Chris agreed to help, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I needed to take action, and I had support from someone who understood the gravity of the situation. The plan was coming together, and I felt ready to execute it. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I had a renewed sense of purpose. I was reclaiming my narrative, taking back control of my life. I may have been hurt, but I was no longer a victim. I was a warrior, ready to fight for my dignity and honor. Tomorrow I would take the next step in my plan. It was time to expose the truth and show Sarah and Charlie that betrayal would not go unanswered. I was ready to face the consequences, whatever they may be. This was my life, and I was determined to live it on my own terms. The day arrived when I was ready to put my plan into action. With Chris by my side and the evidence gathered, I felt a surge of determination coursing through me. I was ready to confront Sarah and Charlie once more, but this time it would be different. This time, I was armed with proof and the resolve to see justice served. I coordinated with Chris to set up a meeting that would ensure both Sarah and Charlie would be present. I suggested we all meet at a local bar, a place where they often hung out with friends. I knew this would be crucial. I wanted witnesses to understand the gravity of their actions and the betrayal they had inflicted on me. As I arrived at the bar, I could feel the knot of anxiety swirling in my stomach. It was the kind of feeling I had experienced before heading into battle, anticipation mixed with the knowledge that something monumental was about to transpire. I spotted Sarah and Charlie sitting at a table, laughing and enjoying drinks with friends. The sight of them together gutted me, but I steeled myself, reminding myself that this was all part of the plan. I approached their table, trying to maintain an air of calm. "Mind if I join?" I asked, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Sarah looked up, her smile fading instantly as she recognized the look on my face. "Mike, what are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tinged with a mix of surprise and anxiety. "Just wanted to have a chat," I replied evenly. "In fact, I think we need to have a serious talk, just the three of us." Charlie shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado faltering. He knew what was coming, but he tried to play it cool. "No need for that, Mike. We were just having a good time." "Right, a good time while I was in a hospital bed." "Let's cut the crap," I shot back, my tone firm. "I have something you both need to see." I pulled out my phone and brought up the evidence, screenshots of their messages, pictures of their interactions, and even a few posts from social media that showcased their intimacy. I placed the phone on the table between us, the screen lighting up with the damning proof of their betrayal. Silence enveloped the table as Sarah's face drained of color. "Mike, I can explain," she stammered, desperation creeping into her voice. "Explain what exactly?" I interrupted, my voice steady. "Explain how you thought this was okay. Explain how you could betray me with someone I trusted." Charlie shifted again, trying to regain composure. "Look, man, this isn't the time or place for this," he said, his bravado fading fast. "Actually, it is," I replied. "The truth needs to come out, and I want everyone here to understand the reality of your betrayal." As I looked around the bar, I could see curious eyes turning toward our table, the atmosphere thick with tension. I wasn't just confronting them, I was exposing the truth to anyone who would listen. "Sarah, you made a choice," I continued, my voice rising. "You chose to deceive me while I fought for our country. You chose to betray the vows we made to each other." Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't let up. "And you, Charlie, you were supposed to be my brother in arms. You took that bond and threw it away for a fleeting affair." The bar was alive with whispers, and I could feel the weight of their gazes on us, the scrutiny amplifying the intensity of the moment. I had never wanted to air our dirty laundry in public, but this was about making sure they understood the consequences of their actions. "Mike, please," Sarah pleaded, her voice cracking. "It was a mistake. I never meant to hurt you." "A mistake? You think that's all it was?" I replied, my voice unwavering. "You hurt me, Sarah. You shattered my trust, and now everyone here knows the truth." I turned and looked at the patrons nearby, who were now fully engrossed in our confrontation. "This is what betrayal looks like, folks. This is what happens when someone you love chooses to deceive you." The murmurs grew louder, and I could see the embarrassment washing over Sarah and Charlie as they realized the extent of their exposure. I felt a strange sense of satisfaction, knowing I was finally taking control of my narrative. After a few moments of silence, I turned back to them. "I'm done with this charade. I deserve better than the lies you've woven. I'm walking away from this and from you, Sarah." She looked genuinely hurt, but I couldn't allow myself to feel pity. I had spent far too long trying to make this work, trying to salvage a relationship that had been irreparably damaged. As I stood up, I took one last look at the two of them. "Consider this the end of our story. I hope you both find whatever it is you're looking for, but don't expect me to be around to witness it." With that, I walked away from the table, my heart racing and adrenaline coursing through my veins. The air felt lighter as I stepped out of the bar, the weight of betrayal finally lifting off my shoulders. Outside, I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. I was free, free from the lies, the anger, and the pain. I had taken my stand, and I had the support of my brothers to back me up. In the days that followed, I focused on healing, physically and emotionally. The confrontation had been a cathartic release, and I felt empowered, ready to forge a new path for myself. I spent time with Jason and Mark, leaning on them for support as I navigated the aftermath of my decision. With each passing day, I felt more at peace. The scars of betrayal would always remind me of the hurt I had endured, but they would also serve as a reminder of my strength. I had fought through pain before, and I would continue to fight for my happiness moving forward. As I began to rebuild my life, I found solace in the brotherhood I had forged with my fellow soldiers, reminding me that I was not alone. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that I had the power to choose my own destiny. I learned that love is a precious thing, one that should never be taken for granted. It's a lesson I would carry with me as I look toward the future, ready to find the happiness and loyalty I truly deserve.